How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Adventure Labs podcast. Right off the bat, I want to say that this episode is going to be a little bit different than our normal podcast. As you can probably see, it's shorter than normal. It's going to be very rapid fire and straight to the point. And it's only myself, the co-founder, my name's Connor, of Adventure Labs, in today's episode. Normally, it's sort of an interview format. It's myself with another creator, photographer, videographer from all over the world. But I have a message that I've been wanting to make a podcast about for a long time. So here it is. I want you to keep this episode in your back pocket for the next time that you land that next brand deal and might have some questions. So without further ado, today's topic is 10 lessons I've learned from working with brands over the years and how you can kill it right out the gate without making some of the mistakes that I've had to unfortunately make. Now, some of these tips are not only going to allow you to charge more for your work, but also attract better clients, more ideal clients, more fun clients to work with, and again, probably better paying ones too. Like I mentioned earlier, this is going to be pretty rapid fire, so I'm going to go through these 10 lessons pretty quickly. I want you to be able to just pull this right out the next time you land that brand deal or you're pitching a project, and you can listen right through it. So before we get into that, before we get started, if you're new here, the Adventure Labs podcast is all about interviewing fellow creatives, photographers, videographers from all over the world and sharing the stories behind the images and the work that they produce. Instagram doesn't do stuff justice, guys. The stuff that we post on Instagram, we just scroll and scroll and scroll, and there's so much amazing work on there. I started this podcast partially to expose those stories because there are some incredible adventures behind that work that you're seeing. If you want more info and more tips, more tricks every week, completely free, delivered to your inbox, you should check out our creator newsletter. adventurelabs.co/creator newsletter is how you're going to get that. It's completely free. It's usually 1 or 2 emails a week, and they're pretty helpful from the feedback that we've heard so far. So if you want to jump on that, adventurelabs.co/creator newsletter. Now that all of the groundwork has been laid, let's get straight into it. You might be wondering why listen to this dude on this podcast, or if you're watching the video form, why should I watch and listen to this dude? What credibility does he have? I have shot for literally hundreds of companies over the past 10 years, photo and video. I will say I'm primarily video, but I've shot plenty of photo campaigns. Some of the cooler clients that I've worked with, to name a few, are Nissan. We did a really cool campaign with Nissan trucks, specifically Mitsubishi, and then Joby. And if you don't know who they are, they make those bendy tripods things that Casey Neistat, who everyone of course knows, hopefully, has made very famous. They are an awesome product. Anyways, that was a fun project. But those are some of the brands that I've worked with, just to name a few. Now, lesson number 1 I will tell you about working with brands is that for the most part, not always, but for the most part, they don't care about your gear. Let me say that one more time. They don't care about your gear. They want to hear your ideas on how you're going to make them more money using your content, using your skills that they are paying you their hard-earned money for. And you talking about how much money you've spent on gear and how many lenses and how many bodies and how many drones you're going to bring to the shoot doesn't really affect them. They just want an end product that they're happy with, that looks great, that you deliver, and it makes them money. It sounds like the harsh reality, the harsh truth, but that's business, guys. It's pretty cutthroat when you start working with brands. They don't really care about your gear. So in that first email pitch, don't come in and say, I have a 1DX Mark III and this lens and that lens and this drone. Come in with more creative ideas on how you're actually going to give them an ROI, a return on their investment, because that is what they want to hear, I promise. That's not to go without saying that gear is not important, because it is. If you need a certain piece of equipment to create a product, a photo or a video that you have pitched to them in your portfolio, then sure, it's important, but the client doesn't need to know about it. Don't show it off because they don't care. That's all I'm trying to say. That leads us straight into lesson number 2 that I've had to learn. Focus on their return. Focus on their ROI, the strategy for making more money for the brand that you're working with. You might want to create an epic travel video showcasing their product, but that may not be what they need. What they might need to drive more revenue might not be that. It could be photos for their next crowdfunding campaign, not of travel, a cinematic travel video. I can't think of any more off the top of my head, but you should get the point. And the way to understand what they need is by listening. Don't come out the gate saying, look at all this fancy gear I have. Look how much it costs. Here's my idea for this crazy cinematic travel video. You're going to love it. Take a step back and ask them questions. Let your client talk. Ask them, hey, what are you looking for in this video? What, in best case scenario, if this whole project was a complete success, what would that look like? Ask those kind of questions. Don't come out the gate pitching your crazy Sam Colder-esque idea, while of course we all know that would be a blast, right? The reality is when you're working with brands, I'm going to say 99% of the time that's not what they need. So ask your client questions, ask the brand questions, see what they need before pitching your wild and crazy idea. The third lesson that I've had to learn when working with brands is showing them your portfolio usually isn't enough. And what I mean by that is sending them the link to your Instagram and saying, hey, check out my feed. Let me know if you like my photos. I can create photos like this for you. Or check out my website with these awesome videos and these awesome photos. Most of the time, from what I've seen, they're either not going to respond to that, or they're going to follow up and they're going to want numbers. They're going to want case studies. They're going to ask you, okay, you're asking me for $5,000 or $10,000 or $500, whatever it is. Do you have any proof that that I'm going to make a return on that investment with you? So the way to do that is every time you work with a client, after the campaign's over, maybe a month or two goes by, follow back with them. Ask them how the content did for them. Try to get them to give you as much information as they're comfortable with. So say you're shooting photos for a Kickstarter campaign or a crowdfunding campaign, like I mentioned earlier. Follow up with them and say, how'd that campaign do? Did people like the photos that I shot? Do you think that those photos had a direct correlation with how much money that you raised? And then use whatever they say as testimonials. Even if they don't give you exact numbers, just getting testimonials from those companies and then putting that into case study form with the photos is going to be much more valuable when you're pitching brands than just saying, here's my work, here's my awesome photos, because now you have a monetary dollar amount attached to your work that you can help provide an ROI on their investment. Now, I want to say a quick caveat here. That's not easy to do. Sometimes you can't do that on all projects. There's other metrics for success, like brand recognition, that aren't really trackable. And if that's the case in your case study, say it. Say the objective of the campaign was brand recognition. And when you're working with those clients, make sure that that's what they're expecting out the bat too, because you don't want to have any miscommunication on what the return looks like. Again, like I mentioned earlier, ask them, if this campaign was a success, what would that look like for you? And oh man, lesson number 4 that I had to learn. Unfortunately, brands most of the time will try to take advantage of you. And that's nothing personal, guys. That's just business. They're trying to get the service that they want from you for the bottom dollar. I mean, most of the time that's going to be the case in any form of business. So you have to know your worth, and you have to not be afraid to hold your ground and say no if a budget isn't good enough, or if a client approaches you with a bad product that you don't believe in, that you don't want to shoot. Don't just take the work on because it's an email coming into the inbox that you might be able to make some money on. If you don't want to take the project on, don't be afraid to say no. And you can kindly do this by referring them to someone else in your personal network. So let's just use this example. The budget's too low. You want to charge $5,000 for a campaign. They have $500. But you know one of your friends is kind of just starting out. Their work is okay. And that's about the value that they're going to get for $500. So you politely say, hey guys, I am not going to be the best fit for this project. You don't really have to say why, but you can say, I'm happy to refer you to someone. Here's my friend. Here's his portfolio, his Instagram. Make an email introduction. That way you're not just saying, no, F off, screw you. Don't be mean about it. Always be the bigger person in these situations, and then pass them off to someone if you can. Then maybe in the future, they'll circle back to you when they have a need for a higher budget project. Lesson number 5, and this one might be the most important out of all of them. Use a contract. I like to call them production agreements so they don't sound quite as scary. But use a production agreement when you're doing work for anyone. Even if it's like a $100 project, $250, you could use something basic. Bigger brands are going to expect one, while smaller brands might just be impressed that you have one and you're making a good impression right off the bat. They protect you, they make you seem more professional, and most importantly, they set expectations before the project begins. How many photos am I delivering, or are you delivering? How much time are you spending to shoot this project? How many days of production are we looking at here? If it's a video, how many revisions on the final first draft of the edit do they get? And then what does each revision consist of? For me, for a long time, I would just say you get 2 revisions. And then the revision process would come around and it would just drag on and on and on because each revision would be like they might have 100 comments per revision. So you have to define that. And don't be afraid to get as nitpicky as you possibly can because eventually those situations will come up. Again, I'm speaking from experience here, and that's going to be the best way you're going to learn too. Just dive in, start working with companies, and every time you're like, ooh, probably should have had that in the contract, add it in for your next one. And then something else comes up, add that in for your next one. And that's what I've done over the last 3-4 years with my video production company to be able to have a pretty bulletproof contract. Now, if you just shoot it over at the beginning of the project and they sign it and send it back, don't just expect that they're actually going to take the time to thoroughly read through it. And if it's a contract for like $1,000 project, it's going to be tough to hold them to that contract because what are you going to do? Take them to court for $1,000? That's going to cost you more than $1,000 itself. Pro tip here, contracts are only as good as the people signing them. So the way you get them to actually read them, have them get on a 30-minute call with you before the project starts, after sending the contract over, before signing it. I think that was the correct order. Sit down with them for 30 minutes, phone call, in person, Zoom, whatever, and go through the contract with them. Say, okay, part 1, this is how many days we're shooting. This is what each day consists of. Here's who's going to be there. Part 2, here's how much time I'm going to spend editing. Here's what the deliverables look like. Here's how much time I'm going to be spending on the revisions. And have them go through that. Then they can ask any questions as you're going through it face to face, and that's super efficient. And it's all about setting those expectations off the bat to avoid problems that might come up later in the project. That is a huge pro tip. Use a contract, sit them down for 30 minutes, go over that contract with them before they sign it, before they send any money over. Now, while we're on the topic of that nitty-gritty stuff like a contract, my lesson number 6 that took me a while to learn is require a deposit. For me, I usually do 50% of the full budget up front and then 50% upon delivery. Now, when I used to not do this, what will happen is you might schedule a shootout 2 months in advance. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks, a year, whatever. If they don't have money down, they don't have a stake in the game, they're just going to cancel on you like 3 days before because, let's face it, they're busy and coming out to shoot with you is probably not their number one priority. So they might bail, and then that's going to screw your whole schedule up. And not only that, but you were expecting to pull that money in when that project was completed, of course. So not only are they going to commit to the project more by putting down a deposit, but if they cancel, it's up to you. And this is kind of a case-by-case basis here, but you don't have to refund them. You don't have to refund them the money if they do bail, and that's why they don't want to bail. If this sounds scary to you to require 50% up front, you shouldn't be, because 9 out of 10 companies I work with expect it. In fact, they usually bring it up before I even get to explaining that part. Most companies expect to pay out creatives, contractors of any kind, whether it's someone working on their website, someone doing labor for them. They expect to put down some form of a deposit. If you don't want to do 50-50, you can do like 30-70. You can make up whatever you want. But for me, 50-50 has worked great, and clients aren't afraid to pay it. It also gives you some money up front if there's some gear that you might want to invest in that you're going to be able to use on that shoot. So maybe you need to pick up a couple ND filters or another hard drive. You don't have to pull money out of your pocket. You keep cash flow positive, money comes in, and then you're already directly right out the gate using that money from the project to invest in the gear that you're going to use. Lesson number 7. And this kind of applies back to when I was talking about a client taking advantage of you. This is sort of a method of overcoming that. Take control. Show them that you have a process. And if you don't have a process, make one ASAP. Lead that introduction call. Lay out an agenda right when you hop on the phone with that client for the first time. Say, hey, before we get too much into it, here's what I'm thinking about. Here's what I'm thinking that we talk about today. I'm going to give you a quick introduction on myself. Then I'm going to go over how my process works. Then we're going to talk about some creative ideas. Then I'd like to hear what your budget looks like. And then we're going to be talking about next steps. How's that sound to you? And just by doing that, they're going to think that you're much more professional. They're going to appreciate that a lot, as opposed to you answer the phone, prospective client says hello, you say hello, and then there's this dead silence, and it's like, okay, where should we start here? That's awkward and not professional. So take control, and not only on these sales calls like I just using my hand here if you're watching the video form as an example, but throughout the whole process, try to be one step ahead of the client. Show them that you really know what you're doing and that you have a process. And when I say process, a lot of creators don't even think about this, but what I'm talking about is spend a day, even half a day, and think, okay, from start to finish, what does every project look like? What's the first thing I do? What's the next thing I do? What's the last thing I do? Because in your mind, all that stuff makes sense. But a client needs to be educated most of the time if they've never worked with a creative before. So by having a process and laying it out for them, that just makes things super easy for them to understand. And again, you're going to be able to charge more for your work because it shows that you know what the heck you're doing. Lesson number 9 that I've had to overcome and learn the very hard way, let me tell you, is a little thing called scope creep. And I'm sure if you're a photographer, a creative, and you've done work for brands, we've all experienced it, right? It's when you're out on a shoot, you had a half day budgeted, so maybe 4 hours, hour 4 rolls around, and the client still wants you to keep shooting. And they say, oh, can we just, get one more interview, 2 more interviews? It'll be super quick. But we all know that's not going to be super quick. And you're starving. You didn't eat much because you thought you'd be done after 4 hours and you couldn't wait to get lunch. Or even worse, you have another meeting or another commitment that you have to get to, and the client is trying to hang you on for longer, and they know, both of you know, that you're not getting paid for that extra time. That's called scope creep. And the best way to overcome that is what I talked about earlier, setting those expectations with that contract before the project even starts. So then when that situation does come up, all you have to say is, hey, this is super awkward. I hate having to bring this up because I would love to keep shooting for you, but I literally can't. I have more meetings, X, Y, and Z. You don't even have to explain yourself. But then you could say, remember, a week ago, a month ago, when we jumped on the phone, we talked about that contract, and, we both agreed to shooting for a half day. We're kind of at that point now. And like I said, I have another meeting to get to. And this is super uncomfortable to do. You have to have confidence to do something like this. It's hard to not be a pushover. And I'm not going to lie, I've definitely been a pushover myself. And depending on the client, if they're gigantic and scary, sometimes I still do. But that decision is up to you to make and to recognize, okay, scope creep is happening, but I'm okay with going over. And in that situation, I would still voice to the client, hey, we're going over right now, but I'm happy to do it because I want this project to be as good as it's going to be. And I have the resources available to be able to do that. I have time, extra time put aside, X, Y, and Z. But let the client know that you're aware that that's happening. And for us videographers, the area this comes up probably the most is in the editing. You deliver that final video, the one that you think is perfect, they're going to love. And then they come back at you with a bazillion and 2 changes that they want to make, but you're already over your limit. Say you didn't include any revisions, right? And they say, oh, could we just change this thing and this thing? It'll be super quick. But of course, by the time you open the project back up, you make the change, you export, you send it, that's not super quick. And then that's not even factoring in the editing time itself. So just use the strategies I was just talking about. It's really the same thing. Have good communication with your client and explain your situation, and hopefully they understand the scope creep. If they don't and they just keep pushing, hate to break it to you, but you have yourself a red flag client, probably not a very good client. And if I were you, I would just finish up the project, try to please them as much as you can while honoring your own time, and then fire them as a client, essentially. I know that sounds terrible, but don't do another project for them. Move on to the next, maybe refer them to someone else. I probably wouldn't tell them that's why, I wouldn't give them details. I would just say, hey, I'm too busy to take this project on right now, or whatever. You can make up whatever you want. It's your own business. It's your own brand. Anyways, let's move on to the next lesson. Lesson number 9, have fun with it. If you're stressed out, your client is going to be stressed out. Then whoever is working under them is also going to be stressed out, or vice versa. If you're happy and excited and then they come at you and they're super stressed out, don't be afraid to be like, hey, what's going on? Don't be afraid to talk to them about things that are a little bit outside of business. We're all just people here. We're all people working together. We all want to have fun. That's just basic human psychology. Just because you're doing business doesn't mean you have to be so serious. And that's just my personal way of doing business. I think that it should be fun. Of course, there are times where seriousness is necessary. There's serious situations you have to deal with. But still, at the end of those situations, take a step back and say, all right, let's take a breath here. Let's breathe. Let's get back into our zone here. Let's keep making progress and let's keep having fun with this project, because I was just having a ton of fun on this last shoot, but now this shoot seems kind of stressful to me. Are you okay? Don't be afraid to do those kind of things. This lesson seems pretty self-explanatory, but I will tell you, after you've been in this industry for, a couple months, but I was going to say a couple years, things can get stressful. So make sure you're having fun the whole time, or else that will probably lead to burnout. And lesson number 10, our last one here, I'm going to end on the bang. This one's going to sound really inspirational, but stay true to yourself and your style. Again, that one might seem obvious, but for any of us that have been in this for a while, it's not. Money's nice. We like money. Speaking from personal experience, it's easy to get sucked into your client's needs. Project after project after project. You pitch your idea, but then they have something else in mind that's totally different. It's okay if it's close. That's, of course, what I was talking about earlier, listening to your client. Every project is not going to be exactly what you pictured it in your head, but if it's something just like way off, something that's not your style, you're not good at shooting it, you don't enjoy shooting it, that's a red flag right there. You have to be able to have the self-awareness to come back to center and tell yourself that this is not my style. And whether that means finishing the project out and then again, firing that client, moving on to the next, that does fit your style. You have to be able to know that your own style comes first and you have to stay true to yourself. Why is this important? Again, you will burn out if you start shooting. Well, 2 reasons. Number 1, you will burn out if you start shooting content that you're not excited about, because it's not going to turn out as good as it probably could if it was something you're passionate about. And B, you're just not going to have fun doing it. You're going to be stressed out. Again, going back to my last point, it's going to be tough to have a good time on set. Number 2 is that eventually you're going to blend in with everyone else if you don't have a specialization. If you start shooting everything for everyone, chances are your prices are going to come down and you're going to get into price wars on different photographers and creatives, which is not good. You don't want to be competing on price. You want to be competing on deliverables, the quality of content that you are providing them, the ideas you have, the strategy. You don't want to be competing on who can do the project the cheapest, because that's another rabbit hole we could get down, but that's not going to result in a very good client. And I didn't just come up with that out of thin air. It's number 1, through experience, and number 2, talking to photographer, absolute legend, Chris Burkhardt. I asked him a handful of questions, and that was his number 1 advice for me. That was my number 1 takeaway, is you have to have your own style. You have to have something you're known for, or you're just going to blend in with the crowd, which is going to lead to all sorts of problems. So that's it, guys. Those are the 10 main lessons. I'm sure there's more. There's probably hundreds that I have learned with working with companies and brands over the last 10 years, the last 3 or 4 more seriously. If you enjoyed these tips and you want more every single week, I mentioned at the beginning, but I'm going to mention it again, is to hop on our creator newsletter. And to do that, check out adventurelabs.co, not .com, but .co/creator newsletter, where we send you tips, tricks about photography, growing your personal brand, making money in this thing, and just enjoying it more every single week. We deliver that straight to your inbox. And if this is the first time you're hearing about Adventure Labs, feel free to hop on Instagram. Check us out at Adventure Labs, just like it sounds, at Adventure Labs. And I hope you got some value out of this one. Again, don't be afraid to pull it out when you're driving to a pitch for your next project, and just give yourself a refresher, because these 10 things are constantly coming up for me in probably every single brand piece of content that I am creating. Branded company content, I don't know. I'm losing it. All right, until the next time, keep creating, keep adventuring, just keep enjoying the process. Peace.